Welcome to Strictly Salina. I'm your host, Carol Bell, filling in for Ann Knowles. Strictly Salina highlights nonprofit organizations in our area. If you or someone you know would like to be on Strictly Salina, please give us a call at 785-823-2500. Again, that's 823-2500. Today we have Brenda Gunder from the Rolling Hills Zoo. Brenda, thank you for coming today.
Well, you're welcome.
Tell us what you do there.
So I'm the general curator of animals. So I manage all the animals collection as well as all the keepers. And that means if animals are coming or going, deciding on what animals we might get to the zoo and bring in, or if we're having any reproduction. Also do a lot of paperwork with that, and work with the keepers and caring for the general husbandry of the animals. So what they eat and how we manage them. Do we have them inside or outside during the weather, and kind of the whole shebang of all that with the animals is what I'm in charge of in the department.
Very cool. So how long have you been doing this?
So I've been at the zoo, this is my 21st year, and I started as a volunteer. We did that for about a year, and then I became an animal keeper, and then I moved into the great apes. So chimpanzees, orangutans, we had a lot of the small primates back then. And I did that for several years until I moved into managing volunteers. Kind of started as a volunteer, then went back into that. And then a few years ago, I went back to the animal department and working in the curator's office, and then moved up to the general curator. So
very good. So it's kind of your passion.
Yes. Animals are the passion.
Yep. So you've brought a lot of props today. So let's talk about some of these.
So cotton-top tamarins are a small primate from South America. They're endangered, and we have a group of 3 females. Right now we do not have currently a breeding group with our species survival plan, but we do enrichment. So I've brought a lot of props about animal enrichment, which is kind of it can be a fun thing for the animals to do, but it also can be occupational. So they work for their food, or they work to manipulate objects. It's something that we do to encourage natural behaviors, like you might see in the wild. Breaks up their day, but also animals like to work for their food. I mean, that's been kind of scientifically proven that you give a squirrel a bowl of peanuts and he's going to choose to work for it. So we do a lot of that kind of items. In the picture with the cotton-top tamarins, that's kind of a foraging. So primates and a lot of animals in general will have to hunt for their food and work for it out in the wild. So we create a lot of cognitive type enrichment, so the animals has to think, how do I get my food? How do I capture it? And get it out. And that really helps with their well-being.
That is so interesting. I love that that they have enrichment to do different activities, because most people wouldn't think that they would need that. So why don't you show us some of the stuff you brought and explain what they are and what it's used for.
Okay, so like I said, a lot of the things really is just finding ways for you to deliver a type of enrichment or a food item. Animals, of course, are motivated a lot of times with food, but this is an example of one of our big cat boomer balls. We have different sizes. We have very small ones that are about this size, and then up into about a 36-inch diameter for the big tigers. So you can see all the claw marks in that. So the keepers might have put scents in there. Big cats, funny, they love any kind of very dark cologne that stinks. Like we would like, ooh, that's some old cologne. They love it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they'll rub on it, they'll claw it, they carry it around. We might put, little pieces of frozen meat or something, or smear some blood from their meat diet, and they then can play with those objects. Along with that kind of an idea, we go through a lot of fire hose, and we want to thank our local fire departments for donating all this fire hose that we get. We make beds and animal shapes and all kinds of things.
Very neat.
This is a fire hose ball, and so big cats can have this. bears can have it, but also smaller animals where we can tuck things in there and they have to dig it out and find it. They can manipulate it by rolling it around. You can put smells on it as well. And so that's a really great way to utilize something recycling, but also, you know, it's free for us because it's donated.
Absolutely, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I love that you recycle stuff.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then we also have, this is what's called a raisin kind of forage board. We also might smear dressings or jellies or some of their biscuits and shove down in those holes. You can freeze it, and then animals that need to forage or pick things out, like small primates, it takes them a lot longer to consume a smaller amount of food, because we do have to watch their diet. You know, we don't want to just give them all this jellies and high calorie things. We have to, you know, have them work for and stretch it out. And so this is a great way for some of our smaller guys. And we have made these on taking large logs and drilled holes in them for any number of animals that it can lick on and get the treats out and get the snacks out.
Oh, that's cool.
This might be for something for our insect eaters, where you can fill this with mealworms or crickets or what have you, and then they can see them, but throughout the day they kind of work their way down until they fall out a bottom hole. And then it stretches out that feeding time. But also you'll see animals, we do it different ways. We also have deer feeders, you know, like you might use in the wild, that'll just sprinkle out food throughout the day on a timer. And that way it's not always associated with a staff member coming.
I see.
And it can just fall out throughout the day, and they see an insect or they see some food, and as they would come across it in the wild, they would then consume it. So
you try to make everything just like it would be their normal habitat.
we do study their natural history and find out, how do they find food? How do they lay in wait? Do they have to hunt for it? Do they like to explore? What kind of a distance do they travel? And what are those behaviors per species? Because how a rhino eats is different from a chimpanzee.
Right.
And then we do develop then this enrichment to try and encourage those natural behaviors that have been studied in the wild.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about how are the climate changes? Because I would think moving to central Kansas would be a shock to some of them. So how does that work?
Yeah, so most of our animals, of course, are in captivity and born in captivity, but coming to Kansas, it's usually a humidity. But generally, we do kind of check that. If I know I'm getting an animal from the south that's maybe hot all the time, has access outdoors a great deal of time, and then they want to move them north, you know, we talk about that. We talk about that with the SSP, the Species Survival Plan, and say, you know, we're a very cold climate. How will that be? They can have skin issues, sometimes develop. They can just be chilled. It might take a season or two for them to get their fur coat in. But also we have a couple of cold weather animals that our humidity is a little tougher on. And so we've added air conditioners in their buildings. And so at a certain temperature for our takin, let's say he's a Szechuan takin that's he is more used to mountainous regions. So about a month out of the year, you may or may not see him out because he might be in his air conditioning. And we have a snow leopard as well that will, as they get older, will let them have access to air conditioning. So we do monitor that pretty closely and make recommendations on that.
That's very cool.
So I've talked about kind of the food enrichment, but we're always on the hunt for something that's not food related. And that's always a challenge. So I'd mentioned the perfumes. That's something that's not big cats like cinnamon and as well, and also coffee grounds, but also sometimes just visual. So enrichment can be broken up to many categories. There's going to be obviously the food. There's going to be novel, which might be something that they might come across in the wild that's new, or a new food or a new item. The ostrich is a good example with that, where they're kind of curious, but not real bright. They're adorable, but so we give them a lot of shiny objects, and they like green. Actually, they like the color green, oddly enough, so we'll train them and move them around with a Mountain Dew bottle on a stick. And then so mirrors, I brought this as an example because we do use reflective things for a lot of our animals. Depending on the animal, small primates can be not recognize themselves, whereas great apes, birds, of course, recognize themselves, and so they see this reflection. So this is a way that they can just look at the world in a little different way. You can kind of see them like, oh, I see something behind me, but where does that go? So it's also a challenging way to let them see their world a little differently. And we do that, and then just balls in general. Jolly balls, which a lot of people give to their horses, we give to our camels, and we also just do free-flowing logs, leaf piles. We bring in browse as well and let them pick through that, eat that. Of course, the hoofstock loves that. But hoofstock will push around, you know, a lot of these boomer balls as well, or we'll give fire hose balls to our rhinos, or something that's called a weeble wobble, which is self-explanatory. They can push it around, but it doesn't roll all the way down the hill.
I see.
And so forth. So it's really kind of just looking at what's going to benefit that animal, what's safe, and then you know, encouraging them those natural behaviors. One of the animals we work a lot with, of course, with our giraffe. So they have that very long tongue, and they need to utilize that throughout the day to create saliva. It's good for their digestion. So we have a number of different types of barrel feeders that we can put food in, or just sometimes it's a tall cylinder, plastic cylinder that they lick on. Just gets that tongue working and getting that saliva going. And it's something they would do anyways in the wild. They're going to be, you know, using that tongue to search out food and so forth. Brushes is another thing, tactile. So you have your visual. So if we're doing a sensory type enrichment, you know, it might be music. We'll play music sometimes in CDs. And it kind of depends. Sometimes we have to make sure it's not going to be an aggressive sound. So if it's a jungle CD, we want to listen to it and make sure there's nothing going to alarm the animal and stress them. But the chimpanzees and the great apes and some of the big cats watch movies. Our macaws watch movies, and they particularly like the human musicals, you know, not cartoon musicals.
Really?
Yeah. So we do have a lot of VHS tapes or machines still, so if anybody has human musicals, you know, that they don't need anymore, we're always on the hunt for those. And we have a few CD players or DVD players now, too.
Very cool. That's so funny. I would not think that. Yeah. What's one of your favorite things to do at your job? Because you have the ideal job, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think my most favorite thing to do is to be out there with the animals and the keepers and see success, see their success, see the animals interacting with something that they have built, see an animal shift when they've requested it, or we've do some introductions with different animals and it goes well after we've kind of talked about it. There is so many things that I like to do. I mean, it is different every day. Your day is never the same, so that's part of the appeal, is the challenge. But you can't beat it when you want to go, you know, feed a giraffe and pet a rhino. You get to go do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to me real quick about your the Art Gone Wild.
Yeah, so enrichment, of course, can be occupational, and they're working for it, but it also can be fun. And so I did bring, I don't know if this one's great, but we have a little sample here from our mandrills, so one of the largest monkeys. And Frank likes to finger paint.
Oh, funny.
And so the thing he does with it is he also likes the smell, so it's a bit sensory. But he'll run his fingers through here, and he'll smell it, and then he rubs it on his chest, or he'll rub it under his chin. So he's already colorful. He's got a red nose and some blue, and he's then gets all these other colors on him as well. So he's getting the sensory and the smell and the tactile, the touch. And then he also creates art. So that's a little one of his. He's probably our only one that finger paints, although we do have some big cats that use their paws. So you can kind of see the paw prints on that guy's. And that is our Amur leopard. And so the keepers will kind of come up with different ways to have them paint. A lot of times, again, you're wanting to utilize how they already naturally move. So if a cat, can raise up its paw, we can utilize that time to look at their nails, look at their pads, if we have to apply medication. So we take those kind of things in training and then do some fun art.
That is very cool.
Yeah, and then we sell this in our gift shop and buy enrichment that we need. So it's a fundraiser that our keepers do. It's fun for them. The animals get at that, building that trust with the keeper, which is important. And then we can also, buy some more things for our animals that we might need. And then this is our giraffe. So she uses a brush, a paintbrush that's mounted on the fence. And then she manipulates that with her tongue and her mouth, and the keepers will kind of dollop a little paint on there, and then she'll move it around. We have a rhinoceros, Indian rhino, that uses his upper lip to paint, kind of like finger painting.
Oh, wow.
And so Millie, our chimpanzee, she's going to be 17, she chooses her own colors.
Oh, wow.
So the keeper, Christine and Lynn, will hold up 2 colors. She points at the one she wants. They load the brush, hand her the brush, and then she paints. So this is my personal one that's a heart, and I just love it.
Yeah.
But she picked out all the colors on there. And so the higher intelligent animals, we try to do that with. And she's, when she's done, she throws the brush out, and I'm done. And Chris and Lynn know, well, she's finished.
Well, Brenda, thank you so much for being on our show today. I have learned so much, and I can't wait to come to the zoo.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this edition of Strictly Salina.